The Adelaide Crows. They were the first club from South Australia to join the AFL back in 1991. And for a football state like South Australia to join the new nationwide Aussie rules competition, it was massive for the state. And in only a 6-year time span, they were able to claim their first premiership in 1997. And they were able to back that up with their second premiership the very next season. But 27 years on, the Adelaide Crows have not been able to claim their third flag. And fans are starting to become more and more frustrated as the drought continues. Now guys, make sure to let me know your thoughts on the Adelaide Crows and how you feel they're going to go in 2025. And make sure to like and subscribe as it helps so much with growing the channel. But for now, let's get into the video. Now since their premiership triumph in 1998, the Crows have only made one grand final, which was in 2017. And in the 2017 final series, Adelaide was almost perfect as they would go on to smash the Giants in the qualifying final and follow that up after the week off to face Geelong and would smash them by 10 goals. The Crows were set to finally break their premiership drought. And the only thing standing in their way was the Richmond Football Club. But the Crows were confident, and even though this was at the MCG, the Adelaide Crows went into this game as favourites. But on the last Saturday in September in 2017, everyone saw the Crows not only get beaten by the Tigers, but the Adelaide Crows barely made a stance. Well, except for this one before the game started. But after the rise of the Crows to the 2017 Grand Final, it all meant nothing in the end, and we all got to witness the beginning of a spiral into turmoil that the club had never faced before. They were embarrassed on the biggest stage, but that was just on the surface, as the Crows had key players leaving the club, which was just the beginning of their demise. Now we'll go a little bit more in depth about the player departures in a moment, because there is a pretty substantial theory as to the mass exodus of players, which was the infamous pre-season camp. And this is one of the biggest moments in the club's history for all the wrong reasons. Now I won't go into a huge amount of depth on the camp, but if you want a more in-depth look of the Crows camp saga, then make sure to check out Jagger Skillbex's video on the whole Crows situation. I'll leave it linked down below. But a brief breakdown is the Crows squad went to a pre-season camp in the Gold Coast, which was run by Collective Minds, who were focused on strengthening the resilience and connection of the Adelaide Football Club. But the camp came into question when rumours started to surface of players being upset and frustrated with some of the activities and tactics used in the camp. Now these reports started flowing through the mainstream in March of 2018, with one source suggesting the aspects were cult-like and some were not in a good headspace. But the Crows' response to these allegations were that the information circulating was greatly inflammatory and in parts were widely inaccurate. However, as their 2018 campaign began, the Crows' form would start to dwindle, and in June of 2018, the Adelaide Crows would cut ties with Collective Minds. Now, the Adelaide Football boss at the time, Brendan Burton, did confirm that one Indigenous player was offended by the use of an artefact, referred to as a talking stick, and references to rites of passage during the camp. But Burton did also declare there are no lingering issues with our playing group and with our staff from the camp. But from the 2017 off-season to 2019, the Adelaide Crows saw a mass exodus of senior players. So in 2017, we saw the exit of Charlie Cameron to the Brisbane Lions and Jake Lever to the Melbourne Football Club. In 2018, we saw Mitch McGovern head to Carlton, and in 2019, we saw the worst of it with the losses of Cam Ellis-Yolman to the Brisbane Lions, Eddie Betts to Carlton, Sam Jacobs to GWS, Hugh Greenwood to the Gold Coast, Alex Keith to the Western Bulldogs, and Josh Jenkins to Geelong. Now, it is unknown if all these list changes were due to the controversial camp, but in the years to come, we would see investigations from SafeWork SA and past players coming out and telling the truth about said camp. But the biggest information coming out against the camp from someone who was there was in 2022 from one of the all-time greatest Aboriginal star players of our time in Eddie Betts. He would release his autobiography where he went into detail about what really happened during the camp. So on August the 2nd, he would come out with his autobiography called The Boy from Boomerang Crescent. Now, he went into much detail about the camp, with statements like the camp was weird and completely disrespectful, and also wrote that private details shared in the cancelling sessions during the camp were misused. So this whole saga went on for 5 years, and is still being felt hard by the club to this day. But going back to the end of 2019, the Crows were set for a rebuild. From 2017 in the grand final to the end of 2019, losing so many senior players, the Adelaide Footy Club was at an all-time low. And everything was called into question with an external review called for the Adelaide Footy Club after two poor finishes in 2018 and 2019's campaigns. Now, this review would be extensive and would have massive ramifications for the club. But before the review even got fully underway, Taylor Walker would step down as captain and Don Pike would step away from the head coaching job. Things were already being set in motion, and in October of 2019, the review would result in the sacking of footy boss and Brett Burton and assistant coach Scott Camperali. The Crows would then appoint Matthew Nix as their senior coach, and thus the rebuild would begin. But there was a problem on that front as well, which was the recruiting at the club. Between 2016 to 2019, the crop of players the Crows recruited didn't amount to much at all. From looking at the off-season draft picks, the players brought to the club in that time period for the Crows, only 5 of them still remain on their list. Now obviously the draft can be a bit of a lottery, and some of this can be in hindsight, but the past recruiting at the Crows was going to be a problem moving forward, and they were set for some very down times. Probably the worst in its history. So of course, most of you are aware, the 2020 Adelaide Crows were a laughingstock for the majority of the season. The Crows didn't record a win until round 15, and would finish rock bottom of the AFL ladder. And in 2021, there was slight improvement with a 15th place finish, but it was well and truly a fall from grace. But to look on the brighter side, with these lower finishes, it did come opportunity in the draft. Between 2020 to 2021, the Adelaide Crows would have 6 draft picks inside the top 40 between each draft. And at this stage, only 2 of these players are not on their list, and the majority of these players are showing qualities of great talent. And probably the best recruit in those past 2 years was Jordan Dawson. An up-and-coming halfback for the Sydney Swans, always had a call home from Adelaide. And not only did the Crows see the potential in him as a player, but as a leader. And in 2023, Dawson would become the sole captain. But back to 2022, there was some decent signs for Adelaide as they would record an extra win and finish 14th on the ladder, but the 2023 season would see the Crows make their way back into the footy limelight as a team to watch. The 2023 season started brilliantly for Adelaide as they recorded 4 wins from 6 games and found themselves inside the top 8. These were the new Crows, a young and exciting team who played with ferocity, and their attacking brand of footy was box office. And yes, being a young side, they did have their ups and downs, but at the end of round 21, Adelaide were only 1 win away from the top 8, and were on the cusp of returning to finals. So first up, they came up against the Lions in round 22 and just lost by a goal. It meant Adelaide had to win their last 2 games to give themselves every chance of finals footy. And in round 23, they would play the Sydney Swans. Now, to be honest, the majority of this game was ruled by Sydney. The Swans led for the entirety of the first 3 quarters, and at the final change would lead by 32 points. At this point, it looked like the Crows' season was done. But Adelaide weren't done just yet, as they would surge home in the final quarter with 4 goals to be only down by 2 points with just over a minute to go. And when the Swans player and Braden Campbell kicked the ball out of bounds on the full, it gave Ben Keays the opportunity to give his team the lead. And Keays would go back, snap on goal, and kick it through the big sticks. Or so he thought, and so did the majority of the people inside the ground. But the goal umpire signalled it behind, and because the Swans quickly played on, the goal was not reviewed. The Swans would go on to win this game by 1 point, and in effect, would knock out the Crows from finals contention. However, even though the Crows would not compete in the 2023 final series, there was a lot of optimism around Adelaide heading into 2024, with many people expecting the Crows to be the team to jump into the 8, even into the top 4. However, this didn't pan out at all. I don't know if it was a mixture of a young side not dealing with the expectation of being a better team, overachieving the previous season, arrogance, or even a mixture of all 3, but the Crows were a shell of their former 2023 selves. Adelaide lost their first 4 games of the season, and from that point, they seemed to be playing catch-up for the remainder of the season. And with their loss at home against the Tigers in round 13, which was only the Tigers' second win of the season, it was truly a dreadful campaign from the Adelaide Crows. So much expectation, but didn't live up to the hype and amounted to nothing. And throughout the season, on the 18th of June more specifically, it was reported that the Adelaide Crows would go under review yet again, but this time it was an internal review. And after this point, Adelaide did have some good results, some sort of improvement, but at the end of the day, a team that was supposed to be competing for finals would fizzle out and finish in the bottom 4. Now, even though many rightly thought the Crows had a disappointing season, in the 2024 off-season period, Adelaide did see some good improvement with some nice recruits to top up their list, and were arguably one of the best teams to come out of the trade period. The Adelaide Crows did lose Elliot Himmelberg as a free agent, but they did pick up Isaac Cumming, Alex Neil-Bullen, and James Peatling. And they also were able to hold on to their prized pick 4, which would end up in the prized local talent in Sid Draper. But now, as we head into the 2025 season, what do we expect? I honestly don't know. With an easier draw, less expectation, with the recruits they've brought in, I think there'll be a team competing for finals this year. But we easily could be sitting here on our couches in September listening to the news that the Crows have sacked Matthew Nicks for missing the finals. And it could be another wasted year for the Crows, and another year the Adelaide fans have to wait. There are so many question marks around the Adelaide Football Club heading into 2025. But I think the one certainty that we can say about the Crows is the fact that the 2025 season is one of the most important in their history.